interconnection, so that, like he said, they can be as one unit, both
Mhm.
spiritual and the non-physical. I mean, so it can be one like a
Entity, or maybe.
one unit, yeah, one entity, the physical
Mhm.
and the non-physical, the
Mhm.
astral,
Mhm.
can actually be. Well, it was like in Goliath. I think people I've seen in Q and Death Q&A,
Mhm.
they had experiences, they survived, but
Mhm.
they were talking about they wouldn't have survived unless something had gone on, something, a force of this connection between the physical and the
Mhm.
um astral.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I don't think I explained it very well, but
I know you
You did
guys
all
only
right.
did it
You
like
did all
5
right.
minutes.
I was thinking about it, but that's all I think about, like the Neverthink app.
Mhm.
Have you seen the Neverthink app?
Oh, I just
I'm
wanted to
finna
It's
know
look it
just,
up right
one
now.
thing.
I think that is a topic.
Did you
It's like
experience
lucid
this?
What is a
dreaming,
soul,
whether
and do
it
you
comes
need
true
it?
or not.
Hold on a second. There's a little bit more of a noise. Welcome, everybody. It's a theory of everything. We've been, like me and Mendes, we're hosts here, co-host, and we have these events for like almost maybe more than half a year. And like every week, we choose some different topics to discuss, and it's like a shared space of knowledge and experiences. So that way, we can have us this space to expand our thinking through connections, like and hearing other people's stories and their way of seeing worlds. And I have a totally random question for you guys. I feel like I'm distracted a little bit by the video. Should I change it, or do you like
Mm-hmm.
it? Distracted?
Mute it.
I think it's a little
You
Can you
can
mute
actually
it?
mute it if on your headset as well, but I can mute it on the computer. Yeah, I think
makes
it's a
me
little
think
bit
of
too
the
intense.
insides of a body.
Mhm.
I don't know why. Kind of
Your
weird.
intent, you went with trippy psychedelics again. I mean, I think there's a thing.
It's a great ritual that just made me
Hold on a sec. I also had a video about the
Yeah.
dream. So can I take 6 minutes of your, like, let's see.
Yeah.
I'll be
Definitely an
real quick.
Azzy thing. Find
Yeah.
psychedelics.
Yeah, right.
Well, I heard
I had a
Mhm.
question for you if you can
Yeah,
use the
she's on it.
microphone, Azzy.
Intellectually, at
I'm just
least.
gonna quickly jump in because I've got the microphone, guys. So were you saying earlier that you just like the evidence or the people showing of emotions in water, the scientific versions of it, or the photographs of it? I can hear you anyway.
We'll give you a
The
microphone.
idea that a person would require physical proof for their emotional or spiritual experiences, and that I was observing that frequently when people reach for that proof, the proof tends to be because the two things don't mesh very well. That proof is either intentionally or accidentally dishonest, is in my experience. And I was citing that study of that Japanese scientist who I've seen that, and I've seen the images. I was citing that as bad science, not correct. Yep. And
Well, sure, but
probably
I would also
intentionally
question your
so.
theory then. Have you tried to replicate any of those tests yourself?
So I have been a student of science, but I have never been an active scientist. So what I have observed, though, is many centuries worth of other people's work of observing crystalline structures. So, I studied chemistry. So we're talking about diamonds, and we're talking about, everything, steel,
graphite.
and water is one of those things. And the crystalline structure is it's one of the primary. It's actually the primary thing that like kind of gives an identity to that substance, right? So what you saw in those images that he displayed were within the reason I can pretty confidently say that he was being totally dishonest, because if he is a scientist, he knows what he was doing. What he was showing were different levels of magnification. So one level of magnification will actually allow you to view a crystalline structure, right? And that's a pretty intense level of magnification. You know, it's to get in there. It's not something you're doing with a microscope that's sitting on your desk. The images that he showed of the that had to do with the ugly thoughts, hate, and these things. Then the images were disordered, right? They were the things that were less, quote unquote, beautiful, and they were more random, is what they were. And what those were pictures of like microscopic images of ice, but they were not images at the crystalline level. And so what as an observer or as a scientist or any person as an experimentician, a person who's doing an experiment, all he could honestly say is when people wrote happy thoughts on these vials of water, I chose to magnify to a level at which I could observe the crystalline structure. And when people wrote words that would be perceived as negative on the structures, I chose to magnify to at a macroscopic level, really. So really what he's measured is the impact of what people write on labels has on his decision making of levels of magnification. So that would be a true statement, and that would be a true honest statement in his experiment. But he jumped ahead and actually completely ignored that. That's the dishonest part, because most people who
that's all you're questioning is the dishonest part of what he said. That's
I could cite other experiments where people try to prove the power of prayer and things like that, which sucks because it totally devalues the other people's opportunity to actually approach those experiences. Because when they hear that, they're like, no, this is just peppered with people with ulterior motives and who are dishonest.
The Templeton
I'm not talking about from
organization examined that.
Okay.
They are a religious organization. Proved it didn't exist.
I have played music to water that I was putting on plants, and I have watched the way plants have grown after the fact, depending what water I'm using. And with those kinds of experiences, I have seen that playing upbeat music, vibrations, as would be said, changes those plants grow better. And
so I appreciate that.
Shown in different studies within schools as well.
What you may have been doing in that moment, though, and this is what you can't know without doing the actual with intentional, rigorous design of an experiment, and what you may have been measuring there was how that impacts your own perception. So you needed to be taking measurements about like weight and height and growth rate and production of fruit, maybe intensity of color, these kind of things. Other than that, what you have is a meaningful experience, but it's just a different experience, and it's an experience that science doesn't devalue, but science as a method. Science is not a part of the brain. It's not even really a part of the human experience. Science is a method to sidestep something that is very powerful in us, which is what's the word I'm looking for?
Biased.
An inclination to jump to conclusions and to trust our feeling of knowing, right? But we have many biases, and humans implement science, so humans will always still find a way to get those biases in there. But the whole point is that all science is nothing else. It's not a belief system. It doesn't believe anything. Science is a method to work around those biases, period. So you cannot claim
to prove
have
wrong
had
all the things that proves right over time.
No, I mean that happens too,
and
that's
what's important. You can't always go by it.
That's important. That's what I'm saying. Science is not a belief system. So science wants to disprove things that have been proven, right? Because it moves you toward greater understanding. And that's to me there where I would start to be a little critical of the intuitive, is that when an idea becomes important to a person, and it then becomes offensive to change that idea, that person has become conservative by definition and limits they close their mind. So it's ironically, almost given how most people think about it, they become a more closed-minded person. And secondly, they limit their own ability to experience new knowledge and new understanding, because the knowledge they have now and the understanding they have now is important to them. And in a worst case scenario, that person goes out and starts to write laws to demand that other people also, live within that context, because these are things that they know to be true, and the truths are obvious and all around you. And if you would just open your eyes and pay attention, you would see these things. And then all of a sudden, you have homosexuals being beaten to death, you have Jews being put into ovens, and you have dictators pummeling countries, and you have I'm not saying that science resolves these things. What I'm saying is we have millennia of experience of the negative and malleable components of the human psyche, and science is one tool. It's not a righteous concept. It's not the arbiter of truth. It's one tool to help a myriad of people with myriad perspectives agree on certain things, and to really refine that idea. Science proves itself when you land a rover on Mars, or when you successfully shoot some astronauts at the moon, put them there, bring them back into their vessel, and then bring them home. Right? What intuition told you about the moon was that it was being dragged across the sky by some chariot. All these things, these ideas that are wonderful, they're beautiful, they're part of the human experience, and they're useful in their own context. But what it doesn't do is get you to the moon, and balance, to me, respects both of those things. And science having an open mind means, to me, it means allowing for both of those things, and also respecting the space of each of those things. So you don't go into a church as a scientist and ask the preacher to prove to you that Jesus existed. You might have that conversation at another table, and you don't go into a lab as somebody who's got a more intuitive sense of the world, and start spouting what they would call woo and dismissing the work that they're doing. That's all I'm getting at. These two things are important, and there's more than two, right? There's gray. This is the idea that these are literally just the two options is kind of ridiculous in my mind. This is massive gradient, and it's all important. It's all of it is important to me, at least. I don't know about anybody else, but
that was what I was trying to say earlier. With everybody has their different perspectives, and so it's wrong to say anybody is wrong entirely.
Yay!
I don't know. On any given yeah.
We're watching.
Yeah.
I love watching this. It's like watching a tennis match. I'm like, wow, whoa, like some different factors. Great. Okay, so Dancing Teeth. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Oh, if you're from Russia, наконец-то русский. New here to all space. Just add me as a friend, and anytime online, just jump in. I would love to talk to you. I also create. Where are you?
There were some new hands up. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you actually put your hand up. So.
Yep, I have a couple of hand raises, but I think like the official time of the event is up, so it's after party time. And I have Paul Leff and son Justin. I think a lot of you guys still have the megaphone, so you're free to do stuff. Should we watch the video about the dream? Just as a fun. So I pretend that I'm a good host and I prepared for the event and stuff. What are you laughing at, mister?
Mesopotamian kings recorded and interpreted their dreams on wax tablets.
I think I should add some.
The sound does is the sound.
I am trying to,
listing over 100 common dreams and their meanings. And in the years since, we haven't paused in our quest to understand why we dream.
Let me restart.
So, after a great deal of scientific...
I love the series. They have like short videos with good English and like understandable
In the 3rd millennium
explanation.
BCE, Mesopotamian kings recorded and interpreted their dreams on wax tablets. 1,000 years later, ancient Egyptians wrote a dream book listing over 100 common dreams and their meanings. And in the years since, we haven't paused in our quest to understand why we dream. So, after a great deal of scientific research, technological advancement, and persistence, We still don't have any definite answers, but we have some interesting theories. We dream to fulfill our wishes. In the early 1900s, Sigmund Freud proposed that while all of our dreams, including our nightmares, are a collection of images from our daily conscious lives, they also have symbolic meanings, which relate to the fulfillment of our subconscious wishes. Freud theorized that everything we remember when we wake up from a dream is a symbolic representation of our unconscious primitive thoughts, urges, and desires. Freud believed that by analyzing those remembered elements, the unconscious content would be revealed to our conscious mind, and psychological issues stemming from its repression could be addressed and resolved. We dream to remember. To increase performance on certain mental tasks, sleep is good, but dreaming while sleeping is better. In 2010, researchers found that subjects were much better at getting through a complex 3D maze if they had napped and dreamed of the maze prior to their second attempt. In fact, they were up to 10 times better at it than those who only thought of the maze while awake between attempts, and those who napped but did not dream about the maze. Researchers theorize that certain memory processes can happen only when we are asleep, and our dreams are a signal that these processes are taking place. We dream to forget. There are about 10,000 trillion neural connections within the architecture of your brain. They are created by everything you think and everything you do. A 1983 neurobiological theory of dreaming called reverse learning holds that while sleeping, and mainly during REM sleep cycles, your neocortex reviews these neural connections and dumps the unnecessary ones. Without this unlearning process, which results in your dreams, your brain could be overrun by useless connections, and parasitic thoughts could disrupt the necessary thinking you need to do while you're awake. We dream to keep our brains working. The continual activation theory proposes that your dreams result from your brain's need to constantly consolidate and create long-term memories in order to function properly. So when external input falls below a certain level, like when you're asleep, your brain automatically triggers the generation of data from its memory storages, which appear to you in the form of the thoughts and feelings you experience in your dreams. In other words, your dreams might be a random screensaver your brain turns on so it doesn't completely shut down. We dream to rehearse. Dreams involving dangerous and threatening situations are very common, and the primitive instinct rehearsal theory holds that the content of a dream is significant to its purpose. Whether it's an anxiety-filled night of being chased through the woods by a bear or fighting off a ninja in a dark alley, these dreams allow you to practice your fight or flight instincts and keep them sharp and dependable in case you'll need them in real life. But it doesn't always have to be unpleasant. For instance, dreams about your attractive neighbor could actually give your reproductive instinct some practice too. We dream to heal. Stress neurotransmitters in the brain are much less active during the REM stage of sleep, even during dreams of traumatic experiences, leading some researchers to theorize that one purpose of dreaming is to take the edge off painful experiences to allow for psychological healing. Reviewing traumatic events in your dreams with less mental stress may grant you a clearer perspective and an enhanced ability to process them in psychologically healthy ways. People with certain mood disorders and PTSD often have difficulty sleeping, leading some scientists to believe that lack of dreaming may be a contributing factor to their illnesses. We dream to solve problems. Unconstrained by reality and the rules of conventional logic, in your dreams, your mind can create limitless scenarios to help you grasp problems and formulate solutions that you may not consider while awake. John Steinbeck called it the Committee of Sleep, and research has demonstrated the effectiveness of dreaming on problem solving. It's also how renowned chemist August Kekule discovered the structure of the benzene molecule, and it's the reason that sometimes the best solution for a problem is to sleep on it. And those are just a few of the more prominent theories. As technology increases our capability for understanding the brain, it's possible that one day we will discover the definitive reason for them. But until that time arrives, we'll just have to keep on dreaming.
And that's how a prepared host looks like. So, what do you
Oh,
think
okay.
about the video? Can you
Yeah, she's over
recall
there.
what functions it has?
Yeah.
Let me turn off the video.
It's very good, actually. I think it could be more than one of those things, though, isn't it? They're not exclusive. It's probably that we have more than that we.
Come on. Yeah, like I have to tell you that this is like it's a video from YouTube. It's 2015, so I believe that some new information has been added to that like ever since. So yeah, okay. So what do you think about this video? Did you have any experiences like sleeping and having some of these functions maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to nightmares, like trying to, run away from zombies and save my friends or something like that. So, like training some dangerous situations. Or well, I would do that even in my daily life. Like I would imagine, like, oh, if a dog attacks me, what do I do? Like, how do I concentrate? How should I cover my face? So it's like some different scenarios. I was like 5 years old. Why would I do that? But still. Maybe because my father took me to a dogfights, to dogfights event. Who knows? Okay, and that's what happens if you live in Russia. Grew up in Russia. Okay, so participation. So I see Saint Justin, Paul, Helion, and Kumitsu Kama Sutra tonight. Okay, yeah, it's funny. Okay, so that's why I chose the short name. My name in real life is Rare Azinat, and that's why everybody's like, "What? What's your name?" And they put like all kinds of hideous forms to that. Okay, so let me grant everybody megaphone. So, yep, you do have it. Okay, Fizzle, let me give you a megaphone just because I can. Okay, and Helion, let me give you a megaphone. So it's officially like a party. After party style.
Okay.
So you can, keep talking, be interruptive, have fun, share your ideas even more intensively. Whatever. Thanks. Okay, I think everybody has megaphones, right?
I'd like to say I had a brilliant dream last night. I was doing this excellent lecture on genetic engineering. Then when I woke up and I realised that YouTube had been playing about genetic engineering, so it wasn't me at all. Yeah, true.
Last night I walked in the living room and my cat was laying on the couch and she was I could tell she was sleeping really hard, and it was almost dinner time for her, so I walked up and I kind of gently tried to wake her with a pet, and she didn't flinch. I pet her again, she didn't flinch, and some tickle of worry came in my head, so I started to get a little bit more aggressive with my petting, and she I watched her leg move a little bit, but still she wasn't waking up. And I said her name, and at which point I was like, God, is she having like a neurological issue or something, And I pet her on the back of the neck, and she did this weird like breathing thing, like a little gasp. But then she kept going, and I could see her eyes, like how cats sometimes sleep with their eyes just a little bit open, and they were doing that REM thing back and forth, and the way that this ended was really fascinating to watch, but I also kind of felt bad at the same time, where
experimenting on animals.
She woke up, and as much of a cat can have a look on her face, she had this look on her face for a split second. Like I watched her pupils return from tiny to full size. I watched her stare at me like, what's going on? She noticed her sister out of the corner of her eye on the ground, and all of a sudden she just exploded out of bed and was in the other room, in the middle of the room in a wide stance, staring back at me like, what the hell's going on right now, in like a half a second. And that's what it was. Like, I think she was just in deep sleep and having a heavy dream, but she just woke up and had no understanding of what the world was at that moment, and then she was ready for dinner.
Triggered another dream by touching her.
What's that? Probably, yeah. Probably, yeah.
I think that transition from sleep or being asleep to being awake is a fascinating time, isn't it?
Or falling
get such weird experiences, a mix of reality and Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, is it hypnagogic when you go to sleep and hypnopompic when you wake up? The transition of phases.
Oh, gosh,
I think it's hypnopompic and hypnagogic, but I can never get it which way around.
That's right.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah. Oh, it is an amazing time, when you wake up, or we don't quite do it. Sort of that half and half, which
that's
I
the
think
worst.
mentioned before, isn't it? Where you can project things onto the room. You can still have things coming from your dream, and yet you're seeing the real room around you, and that's That can be quite entertaining, can't it? Yes. I think
What's
it's
fun is being
yeah.
awake next to a person who's doing that. You talk to them and they kind of say gibberish or just mumble back at you. You know, there's enough there for them to respond, but they're like,
and sometimes there's a little bit of logic in there. You can see the brain trying to engage, but it's not quite there. You know,
halfway.
I learned how to control my dreams.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Actually, I was. Well, I'll come back to the lucidity side. Perhaps. Oh, sorry. I was going to. Well, talking about it. You'll come back to what you're saying there. I was talking about lucidity. I mean, as I understand it, there are different. People say lucid dreaming is when you can control what's going on in your dream, and obviously you need to be aware of that. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever had a fully lucid dream in that sense, but I think I've had what I call semi-lucid dreams, where I'm aware I'm dreaming, but I'm still very passive, don't really try to control what's happening in the dream. So I'm
It's
not
a
quite sure
spectrum.
if that's it is a band, isn't it? I mean, it's
So
sorry. Anyway, carry on.
Can you have a dream while you're
Oh, St. Justin, hold on a second. You don't have a megaphone for some reason.
Or Naya. Naya also has been trying to talk, but doesn't have a megaphone.
Ah, okay, yeah. My brain is like half
Alright.
functioning now. It's late, so you should give me a nudge.
You're half asleep.
Give me a nudge.
Okay,
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of
now.
learning.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of learning sleep experiences. If I constantly read stuff and like try to pack myself with information, basically, like consume it all the time. So sometimes if I have to study like a skill or something for some time, when I go to sleep, I remember clearly that I was continuing to study things. There's like another research about these mice who are trying. There's like in the video there was a piece about the maze, and there was an experiment with mice. So mice like would have a device on their brain that kind of gives a sound to the way their brain works, like their neurons like flickering, and you would hear like a certain pattern where they would choose the path to pass the maze. And when they would go to sleep, they would have the same sound pattern, but like 20 times faster. They were like playing again and again and again in their brain, like because the time is so stretchy. You can stretch the time and like keep your training so that way you save some time in real life, I suppose. Yeah, so I kind of probably do that.
They were replaying the events over and over in their brain. That's fascinating.
Exactly. I remember I remember something funny. Like I remember when I told my friend that last night I had a dream where I would read a text in my dream. She's like, why would you even dream about such things? Like just reading the text, that's such a boring thing. Yeah, I'm like, well, yeah, that's much better than being peeled off your skin, you know? I've had like some experiences like that. I would even give directions like, oh, it's going to be easier to peel off the skin if you cut the wrists and the ankle. So that way you can peel faster. I'm like, what? And I knew that I was the next one in the line.
Is this a taxidermy text?
You couldn't wait.
Oh, no. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Jet just left. She had to go without saying goodbye. So she says, thanks for a great event again.
So I had a question for everybody. Oh, sorry.
Paul, let me give you a microphone.
Yeah, we want Nia. We want Nia.
Yeah. Okay, so as I
new
was
people.
trying to say, I have learned how to control my dreams to an extent. After I lost my husband, I kept having nightmare after nightmare after nightmare, where something was always chasing me. It would be a monster, or a vampire, or whatever, and they would be recurring dreams. And I eventually learned to make friends with that demon or friends with that monster. And once I did that, the dream went away. And I don't know how I came to that conclusion, but I still use that technique to this day, and it's been 13 years.
Yep, I'm with you.
Lesson is we only get enemies, no friends.
Yeah, I remember that was like my coping technique when I actually was fighting the fear of darkness. And I would go to my neighbor to get some books. And like I lived in a house area, and there were like private houses and like bushes and all kinds of stuff, a lot of dogs. And that was quite like, sometimes it was dangerous to people and they were just afraid to walk there. And like my relatives, they were surprised, like, how are you're not afraid? I'm like, I remember that moment when it was dark and I was walking up the hill and there was like a bush on the top of the hill, so that way you don't see the rest of the area. And I remember like, you know, those feelings like it's dark, I'm afraid, and like there's some creatures crawling out of the, you know, bush or around the corner, and there's always like something there hidden in the darkness. And I remember that I'm like, I just should believe, I have to believe that I'm part of that darkness. They will come and they will see me. They're like, oh, she's just our, you know, one of ours, like an advocate of the devil. So basically that was my coping technique. So to pretend like if you can't fight it, unite it with it. So yeah, same.
Can't beat them.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't beat it, join it. Saint Justin, you were saying something before your phone rang. Let me give you a megaphone once. Do you have it?
I was just asking if I had a personal experience, and I was wondering if anyone had a different way to induce a lucid dream. So there's this app. I was trying to make some extra money, so there's this app called OneNolo. It's Work Now Local. And I went out to this company called HelloFresh, and I was working in the protein or the meat area. And outside, it's about 89 degrees, and then inside, it's, you know, like 39 degrees plus 1 or 2, and it's extremely cold because, you know, it's protein, it's meat, or we're stacking the meat packages. And while I was stacking the meat, I kind of had this awake, lucid dream that occurred, you know, while I was stacking the meat. And I looked it up, and I realized that, you know, when you work out in a cold atmosphere, it can induce a dream state or a lucid dream state. And I was wondering if there's another way that anyone has purposefully induced a lucid dream.
Was the
Cornelius.
work by any chance extremely repetitive, or did you hit
Exactly.
a rhythm?
I was just going to point that out, because sometimes repetitive movements, they also induce this almost trance state. So
yeah, it definitely was. It was really warm outside, and the change, the climate change from going from warm to extremely cold, and then also the repetitive motion. And, you know, it just kind of, we got into this rhythm, and then all of a sudden I just sort of hit this peak moment. And I swear it was like having it was a memory that I had, and a childhood memory, but it was literally, it felt like I was actually there for a brief, you know, 5 minutes. It was very, very vivid,
Also,
but I was awake and I was moving. And aware of myself.
Low temperatures
it's just a
can
surreal
affect memory as well.
It was a surreal moment, I guess.
Low temperatures can affect memory. Divers, in particular, can suffer from certain types of memory loss. The move from the 5-minute memory to the longer term, that can be stopped just by being in cold water. And my father had that many years ago, actually. We were worried at the time, but he had that, and it was literally because he'd gone swimming in some cold water. And your brain gets cold, and there's the part of your brain which does that 5-minute through to the long-term memory that can get inhibited, and you can have memory effects as well from low temperature.
Interesting.
Yeah. So would that actually induce a lucid dream, or how?
I'm not saying. I'm just saying that it may have been a factor in kicking off whatever happened. Is that you were in
just my 5 cents. I don't think it was lucid dream. I think it's just a different state of consciousness or awareness. It was definitely like something. I had a similar state when I was playing table tennis. And I found a partner that was on my level, and I couldn't beat him. He couldn't beat me. And we were playing for like 4 hours, 4 hours straight.
I would say.
School, and
go ahead.
And I actually, while playing, I was like for like 5 second time while picking up the ball, I was at another place, but I didn't didn't startle me because I was playing table tennis also at the same time. So I just kept going, and every time I picked up a ball, I was somewhere else, and just like a few times it happened.
Officially in the zone.
Bo Bentley, let me give you a microphone.
Yes.
So focused.
Bo Bentley.
Yes, exactly. That's why I asked if it was repetitive, because that's what.
Yes.
Yeah, it was definitely repetitive. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would also add to that I didn't experience lucid dreaming, but I would say that it sounds like immersive memory recall, probably, because the repetitive movements, especially for a certain period of time, like for longer periods of time, it kind of puts you in that strange state, like almost trance-like state. I experienced that with jogging. Like also, it was interesting that it kind of induces this strange feeling. And also, I would help around the house or like in business for my uncle. So I would have to like help at the factory. So that way I would do like repetitive movements all the time. And because you do something that kind of requires like systemizing or something, you kind of have to solve the problem, and you concentrate on that problem so much that it kind of puts you in this like sharp state where you have to do. I think it has something to do with fighting techniques, because
I think you're onto something. To me, it feels like that you are actually executing the action so well that you are moving the action to your subconscious, because that is faster. It's being automated, and so much of it is being automated that you have things to think about other things.
Are you talking about flow?
Yeah,
I just sat down again, so
I think yes. Yeah.
Like
I want to share something that there's this Chilean writer. His name is Alejandro Jodorowsky, which is really fun to read. And he
hold on a sec. Can you message that to me so I can message to everybody?
Yeah, I do.
When you when you
he talk about lucid dreams and how to induce them, and he do this funny thing that when he's awake, he always asking himself, "Am I awake or am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming?" So if you ask this every day, like a few times, it gets to the point that you do that, and when you are dreaming, you ask the question, and then you can start trying to control the dream that way.
Yeah, I think
well, it's just a funny fact, not really.
I've heard similar tactics.
Yeah. I hear about lucid dreaming that they have like these.
I agree.
Little things that help them, keep track. Every person chooses each. Yeah, go ahead.
There are conditions, aren't there, where some people wake up in a dream, but they're still dreaming, and sometimes they'll wake up from that, a bit like Inception. But but it can be actually, it's a real condition, and some people, think they're spending their entire week, going to bed, getting up, going to work, and then they wake up from that. So it is a real condition. I think it's actually
in the 8th grade. I was sitting in my bedroom. I had a little TV in there that I had just gotten, which I was really excited about. And I was watching something that I don't remember what it was. I was just sitting there with a t-shirt and my boxers. It was summer, and all of a sudden, a really large spider, like nearly the size of my hand, crawled up over my bed and into my boxers. And I flew out of bed, obviously, tore my boxers off.
Reality.
And scampered into the living room, or into the hallway on the way to the living room, before I realized that what was happening was nonsense. It couldn't have been real, and that I had been dreaming, but I didn't experience the transition to sleep or back to wakefulness.
Yeah, that's
all.
night
like
terror.
neither
It's
transition
when it overlaps reality.
And the dream was exactly what I had been experiencing before falling asleep. It was just me sitting there watching TV in the exact same conditions. It was so bizarre.
Yeah. Those are the worst. I hate those.
That one was innocuous, I think, as far as like I've heard of other people's experiences.
Can I just add a recent one, actually? I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks back. My mum had a cataract operation recently, and there's a syndrome. It's called Charles-Bonnet syndrome. And anyway, funny you mentioned spiders, because I actually, she started hallucinating. So perfectly sane, awake, fully awake, but started seeing things. She rang me up and said, Dave, she's seeing things. And she was seeing strange effects on the wall and that. And oddly enough, I took her to the A&E department in the local hospital. And while she was sat there in triage, the doctor was taking her blood pressure and stuff like that. She said, Dave, there's spiders crawling up my lap. And she literally was seeing spiders crawling up her lap.
Oh, wow.
Anyways, I think I mentioned a couple of what it is because she, in the months up to the operation, her eyes weren't feeding the stimuli to her brain. Apparently, the part of your brain that associates the stimulus with what it is gets a bit tired, and so the connections are a bit loose. So when you start getting the stimulus back again, because she'd had the cataract operation, it doesn't always get it right. And it can actually introduce these visual hallucinations. It's called Charles Bonnet syndrome. It's just a perfectly well documented real thing. But it's just bizarre. And when I was driving her back from the hospital, she said there were trees falling in front of the car. And I was running people over and all sorts of things. You know, it lasted 2 or 3 days. But
I was going to say, she should just lay down and close her eyes. Otherwise, that's going to be a scary.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah.
Did you say that, Mom? It's just you're just seeing things. There are no trees. I'm just running over people. No trees.
She sat in the lounge and she said the wall disappeared and there was a shopping mall.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
There. She was just sat in her lounge at home. You know, I was thinking about that, isn't it? Wow. But it's amazing and she was saying that. She was saying, "Isn't it amazing what your mind can make you see?" And she was perfectly aware, perfectly awake, and
we totally experienced that in the world of technology. So it reminds me of that previous conversation where we were talking about water storage, DNA storage, and the way that DNA storage works. I mean, that's amazing how we're taking something physical. We're taking a physical part of the brain that has that memory in it, and then we're reinterpreting that physical, part of our brain, and then overlapping that into reality. I mean, just that concept alone, that we're actually taking something physical and then interpreting that, and then replaying that, and then overlapping that into a physical world. And so
like
she's
AR.
seeing. Yeah, exactly. It's AR, but the brain is actually doing it. That whole concept, if you really think about that, that's really, really fascinating. That's
Do you want a crazy idea?
amazing.
Do you want a crazy idea? Like when you have a trip, actually you see the visuals, remember? Like the 3D things that you see. And in my perception, sometimes I have these like crazy ideas when I'm in that flow state. So yeah, thanks Paul for your compliments. Yeah, and I had that crazy idea that probably it's going to be like the next level of development of human consciousness, where we're going to be able to see multiverses. So as you said, it's like AR. I can have my physical world right here and have my lower functions to just manage this stuff, like we do right now, and my higher functions of my brain, they're going to be able to simultaneously see other worlds, like that DMT experience, something like that. I could be talking, traveling through that, space of 3D, opportunities, like where I could travel into some cell or like another space. Or I would say that I have this hope because it's so like the distances of actual space that are so huge. It's almost nearly impossible for us to be traveling and finding other, sentient, whatever life. And I put my bet and my hope into psychedelics that it's going to be possible to have a connection, not in our physical form, but rather than our consciousness. So we could connect to the intergalactic TV and look stuff happening if you have enough capability to talk to them. Yeah.
Isn't this kind of Gandalf's existence?
Yeah, it was my experience as well.
In a sense, he exists in like different times and spaces at the same time, but he focuses in where he needs to focus and presents influence where he needs to influence.
What did you say? Like that's example. What name?
Gandalf.
Oh yeah. Well, that's great. I would love to be an elderly wizard. Also gay.
No, elderly white male that
No,
invented
he'd be-
science.
Hold this. Paul, no, I'm losing you. Where are you?
Oh, you're here. Stay. Come back.
Come on.
Oh yeah, Paul needs a.
Calm down. Calm down.
There you go. A megaphone. You have a voice
Yeah,
now.
elderly dead white male that invented science. Yeah.
Yay.
As a somebody. Yeah. Hey. And women. Yeah.
Yeah, don't
I was going
forget
to say, anybody had
Madam
any
Curie.
experience or driving? I did. Driving is an interesting state which rather induces relaxation, maybe what you
repetitive,
call
it's just-
flow. Yeah.
Flow.
It's the same route.
Flow. I was driving along one day, and I suddenly had a thought: where are you going to bury your cat? Right? And I shed a tear. Yeah. Well, I didn't know that's so funny. So about a week later, or short time later, we're coming back from Winchester. My wife was in the kitchen, bangs the tin. Cat comes rushing across the room. Bloke doesn't stop. Accelerates.
Russian?
Runs the cat.
Oh no.
No,
Do you know?
runs the cat right. Winchester runs the cat right over in front of me. So I get hold of the cat. Oh, by the way, when I thought, where are you going to bury the cat? I thought to myself, I'll bury it in the field where it likes to play. So as the cat gets run over in front of me, I go to bury it in the field. Wife says, "What are you doing? Bury it in the garden." So I saw it was going to happen, and I then played out where I thought what I was going to do. And she said, "That's ridiculous. Bury it in the garden," which is obvious. But the fact is, I sort of saw it coming. Never happened again.
It's funny. Yeah. Just talking about earlier about dream experiences. Just the one that comes to the top of my head. Years ago, there was a dream I had twice. Well, it was one particular morning, and I've often wondered how you can get this. This is one of these like prophetic type things where I had a dream, and I'm sure there were no radios on in the background because it was quite early in the morning. Nobody else in the house had these subliminal type messages you might get. There weren't any of that. And what I dreamt was there was this
fillings.
All sorts of things. Yeah, that's right. Could be. Yeah, they're picking up the radio. Yeah, you never know. It might be. You never know. No, it was a plane. I was watching a plane, and it had very thin wings. All right, and this plane came down, and it crashed into a building. So I woke up at that point. I turned my radio on, and a U-2 plane had just crashed into a hangar in the States somewhere. And you think, well, yeah, it must be coincidence, but we obviously know those things, And I was checking. I was thinking, if I had the radio on, or had it come on and gone off or something, And I'm pretty sure it was. But it's so vivid.
I love those moments.
Maybe that
weird,
was the
that sort of
upload.
thing. Yeah. Well,
download.
Yeah,
that was the
caustic. You mean
that was the world DNA that downloaded into your brain.
Maybe it's my
Or
fault.
maybe
He
you're
crashed.
a little bit pilot.
There you go. That's right. You reached out and just pulled them out of the sky.
I was controlling the plane. That's what it was.
I
Isn't
suppose,
it?
like YouTube, something. Just
It wasn't investigating Russia, was it? Yes, it was, wasn't it?
Of course,
YouTube
these spies from this Western world.
Was this the group where somebody had recommended the show Sense8? I don't remember if that was another group I was in.
Oh, that one, yes.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Pretty interesting.
Okay.
They canceled it, but that was pretty fun.
I'll try to put the recording on YouTube so that way later you can watch the previous conversations.
Has anyone actually experienced that kind of dream where you feel like you're controlling or altering a physical person on planet Earth, where you're actually tapped into another person, like Sensei?
Like a puppeteer?
Anyone?
No.
Yeah.
I once dreamt I was strangling my wife, and I woke up and I was.
Oops, that wasn't a dream.
That's the one about eating. You dream you're eating a marshmallow and you're eating your pillow, aren't you? Or something. Paul, talking about driving, though, actually, one of those weird ones.
Yes.
I was driving along, fully awake, normal, everything normal, driving along in a car once, my car. And I started thinking about the exhaust pipe. And I don't really know why that came into my head, all right? I'd been thinking about this, and it wasn't coincident at the same time, but it was about 5 seconds after I started thinking about this. Literally, the back end of the exhaust pipe fell off my car. There was a bang. And then I looked at it. The back box had fallen off. My car was making a real row at the time. Now,
it was your force manifestation.
maybe it was my
the fact it had been
of
rattling
time.
5 minutes before. Yeah, no, go on.
Well, it,
No,
it might
wasn't.
have been. I mean, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
it was blowing, but it was just that the big event happened so coincidentally. But I don't
So
know
much
why.
of our
Just
brain
coincidence.
is involved in tuning information out, you know, and
I think
you
it
know,
is.
who
yeah,
knows
yeah.
who knows
have,
what's.
I must have picked up on some sort of noise or something that was happening or
Makes sense.
something.
Makes
but
sense.
yeah, but I wasn't
What did you
aware
say,
of that,
Fizzle?
you know, because
Yeah.
we can't.
I have no
Weren't
amazing
there
stories
some
like
kind of
that.
studies that
Yeah.
that measured like when your brain makes a decision and when you consciously are aware that the decision has been made,
there's the,
and that there's a
80
time
milliseconds.
difference.
Seconds before.
they say it's
100
up to 6
milliseconds.
seconds, isn't it? You can actually detect
Yeah,
that you're
something like
about to
that.
do
Yeah.
something up to 6 seconds. I think it is. I've seen before.
Yeah, that's
Which I
the
do
thing that
mention
really
in my
starts to make you
books.
feel like you have no real volition, right?
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
what
downer.
Harris says. Certainly, Sam Harris, no free will, and
Yep.
yeah.
Well,
And the
and
part of
quantum
that is
theory,
that all
it's
the things we're
212
sensing,
seconds.
they actually take different amounts of time to get through our senses to our brain.
Yeah, I heard. I think I
it's
heard
in the tens
80
of
milliseconds.
but
Yeah,
we
80
see it all
milliseconds.
happening at the same time. So we're
Synchronizing
it's a very
because like
amazing. Subject.
yeah, like some
right.
areas that are
Yeah,
closer
sight
to
and
your
sound
brain, they
should
have like
synchronize.
immediate answer, whereas like your leg or your toe is going to have like a long way back
That's
to
right,
your brain.
nerves,
So
yeah.
you're like, let's wait for everybody to
Nerves
make
are quite
decision,
slow.
okay?
Yeah. So
To
the
summarize.
concept of now is quite complex. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Our perception of now is.
Cornelius is
yeah.
speaking, so I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, you are very. I think you're far. You are either far away from
Quiet.
the microphone, or I took away your megaphone.
Is it
Oh,
better?
I think
Is
you were
it better
yes.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah, better.
That's
And I
okay.
give you a
Yep.
megaphone. Hmm.
Oh, just I was saying that it's really interesting what could happen when a group of musicians they are playing related to that, right? Because they are they need to react to what the other musicians are doing, especially when they are improvising in jazz or that kind of stuff. It's really interesting the time that they need to make the decisions. Perhaps they are thinking ahead about what, or feeling ahead, perhaps, what is going to happen with the other musicians and how they are going to interact.
That is such a cool bit of collaboration at improvised music. So impressive.
I think that all kinds of collective, creations, for example, for example, if you have to, I'm probably am more on the bodily side of things. I kind of have this feeling that I had maybe because it was like my information that kind of sticking into my brain in my early years, but I kind of have this feeling that I had like fighting warrior background because I love these ideas of imagining myself as a fighter, because this is wonderful to be able to just concentrate on your mastery and just like stick away all get rid of all your emotions, all your conscious being, like all of those things that you normally have, like those different levels, and just like put all the computing powers that you have of your brain, of your body, into just one thing, like sharpen your skill and sharpen your senses. So that way, before something, like when you play music or you drive a car or any other thing, you try to project what you are watching on like just 1 or 2 seconds ahead, so that way you can plan, you draw trajectories and you try to figure out what's going to be the next move. And I think fighting is pretty much the same technique. Like you're trying to watch things very carefully. Your eyes should be very sharp. Like your intellect also has to be sharp. Your hand, it's like sharpening your skills. I think that even semantically, this word is used often with these things. So like sharp mind or some things like that. So yeah, being a warrior, that's cool.
So often the idea, like when you look at
life.
somebody who's fighting and they look so fast, the fact is that they are fast in a very trained way, but so much of that speed comes from their ability to anticipate.
Focus.
So it's not just that they like what we saw as speed is that person starts to do a thing and then they respond to the thing happening. But that fighter with all their experience, and muscle memory and because they're in, they're they tend to be, they're in flow in those moments, and they're so much of that stuff is automated that saw it coming before it happened because it's the next thing that they would expect that person to do. And so they were already instigating that motion before the other person even started.
I think it's the same in tennis. The ball's coming so fast, how can they possibly, it's learned anticipation. My technique in fighting is called running away, so that's fine.
Fear is a wisdom in the face of danger. Was it? Yeah, I also love this different practices like
it's called fuck you.
Yeah, it's funny when you have like on your periphery, you kind of train to watch things all the time. So you have this sphere, like almost in like an Oculus. Do you see like I have the Oculus too? So when you look into the lenses, you have the area just before your eye pupils that is focused, and the rest of it is like a little bit blurry and peripheral. So it's funny how you can watch things in your periphery, like a secondary task. So that way, if something falls,
you saying the other week,
you can catch something without watching.
Was it you the other weeks? Weren't you saying the other week, Ozzy, that that women have better peripheral vision than men, isn't it?
Yeah, because you have to gather,
whereas men
stuff.
are perhaps more focused. Yeah, so gathering and also looking for attack if you're looking after the kids. And stuff like,
Yeah, it makes sense. I think
men
it has
perhaps a better stereo vision. I think don't men? I don't know if that's true, but you can sort of understand why.
Yeah. And also, it's pretty cool when some people catch
it's got
things.
To do with the psychological of like actually paying attention to the connections, like in the community and things interacting, where men are much more focused on singular mastery of one specific thing, and they don't hear whatever you're saying.
It's a difficult nature versus nurture context, though. There,
nature versus
Yeah, it's funny. Oh, another funny fact. I think there was like, I think men who live longer with women, they become almost like physically deaf to higher tones of voice. It's like as if their wives talk so often, and mostly women have high-pitched voices. So a man's brain kind of physically almost tries to ignore that part of the sound. It's like, there's some noise. She's just talking.
We do lose our high frequency.
Exactly.
Listening, don't we?
High pitch.
To be fair, it's also more fragile.
Little otoliths. Yeah. The otoliths, the little things in your ear which resonate to the frequencies. So and the little ones break off apparently quite soon. So anyway,
some useless stuff. Just get rid of it.
Nothing useful. You breaks it off.
Violin and women voices. Yeah.
Whatever. I'm talking Oculus, not anything else. What do you call them? Stapler. Yeah. Well.
It was a very pleasant event, I think, just to summarize. I enjoyed it a lot. There were like a lot of people, new movement.
Yeah.
I hope I wasn't too assertive.
No, I enjoyed it actually. I felt like you were pushing, and I was like, oh, maybe you're going to damage somebody's feelings or anything. But then I kept. I kept listening, and I love the way you put sentences, and you were trying to be, and you do manage to be very delicate and explain things in a very cohesive, nice way.
Yes,
and
I agree. Very eloquent.
I appreciate it.
I'm very much with you on most of what you were saying, though, because
yes,
you got to be careful. One of the points I was going to make is that one problem you have with debating things like this is that we're trying to use languages that really are not. They're okay for day-to-day things, but they're really not suited for the complexities of science and the things that things that don't exist, abstract thoughts and that. So which is why you tend to get the scientists will use the term frequency and energy in specific ways that are well defined, and then you'll get the more intuitive or spiritual side of it latch onto words like frequency and energy. I noticed they never use wavelength, but never mind. So
I did,
and it's a problem.
I said I'm on your wavelength, Fizzle.
I loved it.
Yeah, but that was the science
Ali
side
and
of
Timon
it,
uses
isn't it? In a way, Yeah.
They both use these words.
But what I'm just saying is, it creates problems because we and it's like we were debating the other week about consciousness, self-awareness, and those sorts of things as well, as to what the definitions are. And if you're making a statement, you're sending out a whole series of words, and each one of those words you use has all sorts of associations and links to other things.
Temperatures,
and they are slightly different from any one person to another. So it's really difficult to actually
communicate,
talk things out. Yeah, to just by talking with words, which is why in science we end up with they have to work hard, don't we, to come up with clear definitions and formulae.
If you've ever written a scientific paper, it's such a bizarre experience.
They're independent of any one person's interpretation of language, aren't they? Which is what mathematics
I enjoy medicine so much, though. They use Latin. I think that was a great idea to use Latin, or Greek for backing up the science. So you immediately jump from just from frequently used word, you just jump into a very specific, self-explanatory, oftentimes notion. So, for example, if somebody tells you the rare diagnosis that they have, it's fibro something tuberculosis, and you're like, oh, I know that fiber is it's like muscles or soft issues, and you kind of can figure out what it means, if you know Latin, which is pretty cool.
In chemistry, I could tell you the name of a molecule that you've never heard before, and then you could draw it.
Yeah. Because it's self-explanatory. It's like oxide,
you could literally draw its three-dimensional structure and know every little detail that we know about that thing.
Trimethyltryptamine or something like that.
You
just know exactly how it's arranged, and it's great.
And we fall into psychedelics once again. Oh my god!
I think they've changed the way they name chemicals slightly since my days of school. But I do remember. Have you ever done the experiment where you make nylon and you have two layers? And one of them is 1,6-diaminohexane, and the other one's decan 1,10-diol chloride. And
you have a good memory.
I think it's named differently now. They've slightly changed the way they name it, but those always stick in my head. And I remember you pull it out the membrane from where they meet,
stringy thing.
Pull it out, and then somebody grabbed it, and then we took it out through the chemistry lab door, and we're walking up the corridor of the school where it was pulling out this strand of nylon. It was amazing.
Two immiscible liquids who have a surface interaction. Yeah, and what we did, it was like a rod with a small piece of string with a hook on it, and we just reach down and hook that membrane in the center. You just keep twisting, and it almost feels infinite. The thing just you're just pulling because as you create the space, more connects, and it's pretty. That was cool.
Connect, and it just eventually runs down to the bottom.
This business about not knowing what matter is, well, you can feel it. We know it exists. We don't have to know actually what it is, but we can use it. But when it comes to spirit, what are we talking about? Something that survives death, or are we talking vibrations? I don't know. I know what we're talking about when we talk about matter. I don't really know what we're talking about when we talk about spirit.
I think the concept is really useful to talk about.
Just living energy.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Fully.
What is that like? Also, somebody else thinks something different. But what does living energy mean?
I mean, it's the energy that is within you, that causes you, that gives you life. Without it, you are nothing more than dead flesh. It's living energy.
Yeah, but the living energy is adenosine triphosphate as well, isn't it? So adenosine triphosphate gives your body energy.
Is matter. I mean, isn't the more
equals MC squared?
The more isolated and the more
information bullying
dense the energy becomes, the more matter is is created. That's what the Higgs boson kind of shows us, is it goes from a state of interactability to a state of isolation to a state of inactivity, and inactivity becomes matter.
Another take on this is
energy becomes matter. Energy becomes matter at the state of interactability or non-interactability. That would be the E. If you look at the actual chart, if you actually look at the chart, the eon and the nuon, the actual mu becomes the muon
What about the
becomes
gluon? I like the
less
gluon and the
inactive.
Klingon.
Oh, gluons, and they hold quarks together, don't they?
And the
Klingons.
strap-on,
Oh,
also
the
good.
Klingon I like.
Klingons, yeah. Captain,
Klingon on the starboard bow. Wipe them off.
No, it's on the loo wall, isn't it? Captain Kirk being down, having trouble
I
with
think
the Klingons. Yeah.
My hunch is that Paul's point there is that the matter can mean a very specific thing, so that we can all be sure that we're talking about the same thing, and the word spirit means something different depending on who you're talking to. And so if you
To me,
adopt,
it means something that survives death, if there's such a thing. That's what.
Right. To somebody else, it might mean motivational
vodka.
force. Like that person has spirit, right?
To Russian, I mean vodka.
That's right.
I hear some Russian jokes.
Like everything else, is just another word for vodka.
It's a vodka.
Welcome to Russia. Okay, I'm trying to find there was like a humanism lecture where I had that slide that I took photograph of with muons and gluons and stuff. Those funny words.
So it's called MEV, and the ratio is 0.51, and that's the electron, and then there's the muon. And those are both
milli-electron volts.
Those three,
mega electron volts. Yeah,
those four energy states are the energy states that makes up the spirit, or the bioelectric energy that's within a person.
So if you know as opposed to something that you
it's the standard model
think is likely.
The particles at the moment, yeah. Got
That's
quarks, and they're held together by gluons inside a quark gluon soup you have inside the protons and neutrons, for example.
So it goes from
credits to Ron from humanism.
And once it gets to Gev, it becomes a more interactability. And the actual electrical states becomes positive. It becomes one positive.
Top and bottom quarks there. Then you've got the gluon, this is Z boson. You can see the bottom one there, the W boson, which is these bosons are the sort of force carriers. So so things like the photon and that is one of the bosons.
When we do a biofrequency test, and we actually detect the actual biofrequency, we're actually detecting the TAU. It's the 1.7768 TAU tau. It's the GAV. That's the first indication on a biofrequency meter. That's the first indication of life.
So that's
what's a
electrons,
biofrequency
muons, and tau.
meter, St. Justin? What's a biofrequency meter?
What do they do?
What's a biofrequency meter? What do you mean?
Yeah. What is it? What is a biofrequency meter? It's a meter that measures biofrequency. Yeah. What do you? I don't understand what it is. What's a bio? Is it like a?
What's biofrequency?
It's like a radio wave. Your body emits a frequency that can be detectable and picked up on the same. So I can create I can pull out a device and actually read your biofrequency and physically record it, and then play it back.
It's actually true that the biological material does transmit certain, normal radio frequencies, because that's what it's a millimeter wave.
It transmits heat.
If you go to
start.
Well, that's right. Yeah, if you go to the airport these days, right? There's like a cubicle you can stand in. You go in there. It's not bombarding you with anything. It's just a millimeter wave receiver, and it'll give you a scan. You can see inside the body. So much so they had to have a modesty filter in that. Otherwise they see too much of it. But if you've got a gun or something, it comes out really obvious as well. I know Kinetic, the company I worked for once, that they were developing these millimeter wave cameras. There was a big push back. This is going back in early 2000s when these things were developed. So natural. I mean, I don't know what frequencies, but it's roughly in the millimeter wave wavelength area.
What people
I don't know how
when they see auras. Do you think they're super
So
sensitive.
Who
it's
knows?
from
I mean,
3 hertz. So you can't visualize it except through a computing system, but it's anywhere from 3 hertz all the way up to about 30 hertz. If we can
That's
get to
very
the
low
place where we can visually see the actual frequency, you could actually, that would be aura. I've heard people say that there's cameras that are capable of detecting and actually capturing a photograph of that frequency area.
Yeah,
But I don't know if there's any actual evidence of that. I think that's more
so. The ones I'm
speculation.
talking about are millimeter wave, so you're talking very high, many gigahertz, terahertz.
St. Justin, is this
I
this
think we
website?
mentioned the name of the thing last week, didn't we?
Or is it the wrong one?
The camera, was it?
Yeah, that's my website.
Yeah, I think I brought it up
Looks
again last week.
hacky.
Yeah, the millimeter wave cameras. Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
I'm trying to think of it.
I got to your YouTube video, like the low ones about the quantum something for like 1 minute long. I didn't understand anything. Hold on.
Oh, just if you click on the YouTube one, I have my frequency recorded and it's on there right now. You can see it. I recorded mine a long time ago.
Which video should I put?
The first one. It's the EEG ECG.
Do you see it on the screen? Cybervines.
Yep, that's the first one right there. So this one is a recording of both my son and me. And the first 3 lines, so the line that it's on right now, the 32, that's actually a constant. The Earth actually emits that frequency. That's the 32.8 hertz. It's a common earthbound frequency. And then below that, there's 2 different levels. The one that is the first meter is myself, and the second meter is myself.
I think something you have to be careful about, right?
Interference
is
from outside sources.
Your main frequency. Now in the States, it's at 60 hertz in the States. Because if I did this, in fact, I got
Cybervines is here to help you grow with technology.
From the 80s. And I was showing my son this the other day, an old cathode ray tube oscilloscope, dual beam, and I literally just held the held the 2 terminals on the one beam.
Oh,
and
you can
50
have
hertz.
You can have influence. You can have influence, and you can get influenced by even a radio station. I actually picked up an AM radio. I tried this in a local area that was actually right next to a broadcast station. And because I was trying to detect my own frequency, I picked up an AM radio on my own frequency. So I had to actually tune it again because I was literally picking up an AM radio, and it was hilarious. My son was listening to it. He goes, "That's your frequency," because it literally sounded like a guy talking, but because the
people have had cavities in their teeth. Resonate with AM radio.
Isn't that what
it was so fun?
Super sensitive. It was just super sensitive. LIGO, the gravity
Okay, so this right here,
everything,
that is the actual sound of my arm right there. That's the frequency that is emitted from my arm. That sound that you're hearing is literally my frequency that's being emitted from my hand.
Is this what they're describing when it calls something soul music?
I have no idea.
Wasn't it heartbeat then?
So when you pick up your phone and you actually swipe left and swipe right on your phone, it's detecting your bio frequency, and that's what actually causes the swipe left and swipe right. It's causing a certain level of frequency, and it's detecting that bio energy, and it's interacting with that process. So that's the actual swipe that you're making when you're
there's no epiphany in the idea that our bodies are electro systems, right? We're electrochemical. We are full of electrical systems, signals like constantly. So the idea that there's electrical activity is just like something that we know well, and we use that knowledge to make a touchscreen that is capacitive and can detect the change that occurs when contact is made, and then I think it's just I think that the issue, the part where like some people, including myself, like start to flinch a little is the concept of soul, as opposed to what you're describing, which is just kind of well-known like physiological ideas.
Well, I mean, the interesting future of this is not just going to be being able to, when your brain says to your foot to move, it actually sends that as an actual message.
Neurochemical signal, calcium and
It's
potassium
a signal that goes
ions.
all the way down to the bottom of your foot, and your foot actually responds to that. The future of that is going to be
action potential. That's the word.
Action potential. You'll be able to go into a space like this right here, a VR space, and move forward, and you'll move forward. You won't. Yeah,
we're already doing that. Great.
You won't.
Yeah,
you won't even have to interact with a joystick or anything. You will actually just think the thoughts.
Yeah.
And it will record the actual process the same way that the body records the process, and your foot moves physically. You'll be able to move an AR, entity.
Is this Elon Musk's Neuralink? Is that anything like it?
I think that's the idea.
It has a direct interference.
That's
Valve is working on something similar.
That's a little bit more of downloading information.
Monkeys can control arms over the internet these days, just with headsets on.
You say monkeys?
And in fact, there was a lady the other day I saw.
He wants to
she's
download
got a new
information.
prosthesis.
I think that's
puts
his
it
process.
on and it's connected.
Well, I think it's rather similar because I think he's reading the.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the structure that they use, but I would suppose that technically what they would do, they would like put the the device into the brain, so that way they can read the EEG inside the brain in the area that they need, and so that like when it has a lot of patterns, it can use the AI to kind of interact.
The way that he described it is, you could literally have a piece of software that would be the equivalent of reading a book, and so what you would do is you would literally interact with your phone, and you would hit upgrade or install, and you would literally install that book, and your brain would just automatically understand the concepts and all of the pages and all of the material that's within the book.
That's definitely kind of what pretty out there concept, though.
That's what Elon stated, and I don't think that's. Wow. And there's a lot that you have to. I mean, you got to think. We have language.
Memory is distributed throughout the brain, isn't it?
We have a problem with language on the earth right now. Can you imagine every single person's process from the time that they were 5 to the time that they are 50?
Memories.
Their body that's a language. That's a body language. So we would have to be able to interpret every person's body language to be able to impart that information. That's a huge step that Elon is trying to achieve. That's
so
huge,
on a much nearer time frame. Something that I thought was interesting is I'm sure most of you have met Brian. He goes by the Hebrew Hammer in here. Have you met him?
No.
He runs a meetup on Mondays. He's been doing it forever. That's like for content creators. Anyway, he's pretty prolific in here, and so I don't know. I figure you'll probably, if you ever see him, you'll recognize that you've seen his avatar before. But he was I first talked to him where I bumped into his world, and he had basically he had this big, it's kind of geometric, constructs, very large, and one of them was responsive to music. He had that MRE piano in there that's playable, and it would interact with that sound of that. And but he was saying that was just kind of proof of concept, but it's because the real idea there would be that it would respond to biofeedback, right? So, and then when we, which I thought was pretty cool, and we got to talking, and we kind of came to like a thing that played out of that conversation was this idea that like if you could have, say, whether it's a combination of EEG, heart rate sensors, and things like that, and like say in VR where you could actually kind of develop
eye tracking,
that idea of an aura, actually a real thing. No, but I mean, like, take all the information you have about a person's emotional state.
Exactly.
Right?
Eye tracking would be a good idea as well. Like you can, you could define the type of person maybe, like just by eye tracking. Because when I listen to people, maybe I can be looking straight at that person and being relaxed. Sometimes I do constantly. If I see that video, I keep distracting, and my eye is just like traveling all over the place to gather information. So I think eye tracking could be.
Unfortunately, they'll use it significantly for nefarious things. But I think it's such a cool idea in the ability. It's like, say, Paul and I have this idea that like we want to have a conversation with each other and ensure that minimize. Well, let me reframe it in a more positive way. To increase honesty both with each other and ourselves. And if we sit there and have this, where we're not watching meters, we're not looking at EEGs, it's just this color, and you're like, well, I hear what you're saying and I hear what I'm saying, but like my body's presenting something different.
I feel you.
Right. Then it's like, okay, well, let's let's look toward like the truth in this conversation. And this is a place where I think that this like play out of like science, the understanding of the anatomical mechanisms of strength, of stress, of the of like what happiness looks like in the brain, these kind of things. And then without having to interpret those, but you just see the colors, I think that it could be a pretty interesting tool of of communication. Not necessarily a truth device, but like a I don't know how it would work, but I think we have most of what we need for that already.
It's quite interesting that because we're wearing headsets, we're actually pretty well set up for start monitoring,
brain
potentials
areas
in our brains.
They're doing it already.
We could have sensors on the hand controllers.
That's what it
does. Your sweat, your galvanic skin response, and things as
in
well.
The future,
so between the headset and your hand controllers,
in the future it could be set up with the
sensory
with some like
your
costume or something that could also read your
and things like that.
Your nose grows like Pinocchio.
I was about to say that. I was about to say the exact thing about your nose grows.
Here's the thing. In the year 2000, I was working with a company called Ultramind, which are basically using galvanic skin receptors to control things. But it was very basic. A company called Ultramind, which became Ultrasis. They were trying to move around images on a screen. Yeah,
I mean, people are using thought control to some extent. It's very primitive, but
I know one project that is in MIT. There's one lady, she uses the combination of headset and EEG, because I had that idea and I started Googling like what actual ideas do we have. My idea was actually to create some VR experience where you have like an imitation of a trip, like an LSD trip or anything, doesn't matter. It's just like an altered state of mind, and the substance that induces it could be different for different people. The idea was actually without inducing anything, like without using any substance drugs or having to meditate like for 20 years, maybe you could just use VR, like, or some combination of different factors to imitate that. Psychomimetic stuff. And you could use actually the combination of EEG device, which there are many elegant ones like Muse. And like put the headset.
So you're talking inducing an actual trip without the medic. Wow, that's
my idea, just to have fun.
That's actually a really that's actually really cool idea.
And actually, my idea was to have this like visual part where you have like a fractal pictures, like fractal trip, let's say, like the video tonight. And what you would do, I would put like different doors into that that experience, where like one of the depicted like one of the swirling fractal ape, like
that's Lawnmower Man. That's totally Lawnmower Man right there.
Well, it's just it was just a fun idea to think of.
A better appreciation of reality, that would be a trip in itself. We're talking about 14.8 billion years, is it, Alien? And 4.8 billion years. Oh, okay. What's a few billion?
Yeah,
I mean, if you had an actual appreciation of what reality actually is, that would blow your mind. It should blow your mind, but we can't, because you wouldn't be able to make breakfast if you tried something like that.
Yeah, but I thought about that idea as an experience that would help to expand your own, like almost like a, I would say that maybe like a simulation that would help to appreciate your life. So that way, because you can get inside like the headset, that whatever thing that I'm thinking of, and within short period of time, you would be able to experience like a whole thing. Remember the Rick and Morty when they had like this something game center, and he said like, oh, you shouldn't be worried, just relax. And he put on a headset on his head, and they had like a game in the arcade place where he would play like for a guy who was just like a regular guy who was like getting married and working in carpet shops and stuff. And the game was actually to to realize the full potential of that main character that you're playing for. So I'm like, oh, I can't believe you returned to that carpet shop and you died being 58.
That is a fascinating idea. Because I mean, we can already induce simple energy states or simple feelings like being mad or being happy. We can induce those feelings just by a frequency. So if
Also
you
with words.
if you combine,
you can do it with magnetic fields.
If you combined all of that together, you could definitely induce a lucid. I mean, you could definitely induce a trip if you really did nail down exactly how the brain reacts to that that compound, and you just replayed that same compound over and over and over again until the body just went into that trance state. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, we can talk about it. It's a fun idea. I have a lot of ideas, but not all of them are
religious experiences, for example, with magnetic fields. That's been done quite regularly.
I think about the combination. That's the key to stuff because, like, as I said, we discussed education recently, and somebody said, well, education is by nature is a not a violent process, involuntary process. It's something that a child would never do on purpose, because it's boring to study and they would rather go and play outside. I said, well, the success of this idea is actually a combination of things. Like when you teach somebody, the process itself it's worth a lot of calories. It's like you don't want to spend so much calories studying something like that, but I said what's important is the combination of intellectual things, calculational, learning something, combine it with good emotional state. Sometimes you can be very productive on your hardware level if you have emotional state that is positive. So if you're in a good mood, you are more productive. Being happy is actually very useful because if you're happy, you're very productive. You are always energized and stuff like that, especially if you have
strangely
ADHD.
Anger can make you pretty productive too.
Yes, but for a short period of time. If you're angry, anger has a very short lifespan. That's why has if you don't use it, it has side effects because the fight or flight experiences that you have. I was so fascinated. One of my students, actually, he's my nephew. They live in Spain, and he looks like a very, very smart, interesting guy. He's just a 10 or 11. No, I think he's 13 years old. And his parents, they asked me to find a child psychologist. I'm like, why? What for? He said, oh my God, he has so many fears. He has panic attacks and he's afraid. He can't sleep. And I was so fascinated. So I talked to him the next lesson, English lesson, and I was asking him questions. Can you describe what exactly bothers you? What do you feel? It was a very interesting combination of a highly intellectual guy, that little guy who has he's really smart, but at the same time he has this situation that he can't handle, and it's it's frightening and it's exhausting, being afraid all the time and having been he said, I wake up at night and I'm so I'm panicking. He says I have this terrible feeling that everything is bad and it's dark. I'm afraid, and I'm like, why don't you just put on some light whenever you go to sleep? He's like, the problem is can't fall asleep if there's light. I'm like, oh my God, that's unfortunate for that. So I was wondering, I talked about, I just remembered because we mentioned fear, that fear has, I have this idea, a hypothesis about his state that maybe, he has some hormone, dysfunction, that actually his body is enacting the reaction to fight or flight, like a dangerous situation. So at night, where he's supposed to be sleeping, he has this physical reaction to danger, but his conscious mind doesn't understand where's the danger. He doesn't see the danger like a real rational danger.
So you're describing me as a child here. I was just talking to my mom about this the other day.
And
when I was a kid, I was terribly afraid of the dark. I knew without a doubt that there was nothing to be afraid of. I didn't believe in monsters. I didn't think there was. I literally knew nothing. There's nothing wrong here. There's no risk, no threat. I remember sitting there thinking about it. My everything about my fight or flight system could not get over the sense of danger. It just felt.
Yeah. I think the traumas, they come from that state where you had like this acute reaction to fight or flight, like a acute danger, but your body didn't respond quickly. And that's why if you didn't respond quickly, you kind of have this energy potential that is stuck in your body. And that way it kind of starts, hiding in different layers of your subconscious levels. That's why some people, they have like very strange, almost not disorders, but some traumas or problems that, like, there was a guy, I remember like one case from a psychologist, that like a guy keeps thinking about being being like fixation on his asshole or something. I don't remember. And the explanation was so ridiculous, like that when he was a child, his father would spank him using a belt or something, and because it was like a fearful experience. But for some reason, actually, that experience was like a very strong spike of emotions. Your body remembers the memorable moment, like the spike of energy in your body, like of emotions in your body.
That's genetic information. That's
something
genetic
like that.
memory.
Yeah. And after the years, you kind of have this.
Here's a book for you related to that.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Have you ever heard of? It's called The Body Keeps Score.
Yeah, I think I heard of it.
Oh, that's a good one.
Can't remember the name of the author. It has more to do with trauma in general, and
fixations and stuff. It was strange how our brain actually uses the fearful memories, like the shame and everything, and transforms it into arousal, into some strange things like a pervertive. Like fantasies. He wouldn't even do anything. He's like, I just keep thinking about these crazy ideas and it doesn't let me go. Like, how do I deal with it? I'm a straight, normal guy. I don't want to have, these gay orgies, but I keep fantasizing about it. So it was like a very interesting way of coping. So when you have that potential that is not used like immediately, and it's like, it has the spike that, is transformed into a long-term something like trauma or whatever.
Another way to potentially, if it's not processed, put away.
Exactly.
Still it's kind of like a ghost of an experience, right? It's like still out there, and needs to be acknowledged so it can go away.
Or it's like hiding somewhere, like to be revealed, or maybe triggered. Like epigenetics, for example. Like sometimes you can have like one event, it kind of cracks your gene, but not entirely until you have like some other random combined factor that actually breaks that gene, and you all of a sudden you have this strange breakout or
it actually
psychotic.
Just to be clear, it doesn't change the gene.
Yeah, epigenetics.
Expresses it.
It doesn't change the gene though.
Yeah, I know, but it's like the expression, it activates it.
But doesn't it change it? Doesn't it change it in some, on an ontological perspective, future-wise, like with your generations?
It changes the tools that work on the genes, and so it causes the genes to be expressed in a different way. So like if I, say I'm a mother, and I experience some trauma, my body responds to that, and then I have a child, and that child is created within the environment of my body that had been modified by that trauma. And so the way that
affect the child from that.
The child is then crafted with those tools. It's sort of like if the genes are the clay. The clay is not changed. It's the modeling tools that are changed a bit. And it goes away because the DNA isn't changed. It goes away after tends to go after way like 2-3 generations or something like that.
Generations, yeah.
I would say that
Say, what about the Dutch
DNA
Hunter
is like a
very
full
good talk on
instruction
that
of
is on Royal
possibilities, like all
Institute.
the information that it's like your instruction of your body, but like depending on the situation, on the environment, actually the way the parts of the instruction that you use and the way you can interpret the same instruction different. So that way you have this like whole tree of different possibilities and different potential versions of you, which is very curious. So you have a DNA that doesn't change over your life. Whatever you experience, it's not written in your DNA. But that like code that is unchangeable can have expressions like, so you have epigenetics over that. So something that can interpret the DNA that is unchangeable in different ways, right? Am I explaining it?
Very good talk on that.
Yep.
It's another thing I was talking to my mom about the other day, and I felt really guilty doing
Why?
it.
It's your fault.
In some sense, it feels like putting blame on her, you know.
For being
that's
awesome or
right.
what?
Very good talk.
You give me that, yeah.
I met a
good
person. I met a
Royal
person in
Institute.
here, and he gave me this conference. It was a bio. It's called Syn Bio Beta, and they do to this conference where they do biosynthesis and bio research. And this company that does research on DNA was saying that because the mind is sending a frequency or sending a pattern, DNA actually twists the same way that we would if there's a way of doing it and simulating it in water. So whenever we send information in water, the actual response in water is it twists and makes this spiral. And he was saying that the DNA inside your body actually twists because your mind is actually projecting that.
But it's
Yeah,
the DNA
but
is
it was
twisted
fascinating.
at several levels into chromosomes.
We're not going down the route of homeopathy.
It's fascinating because he
No,
said that
that's right, no.
they essentially found evidence from a visual perspective. You can actually see it now. That you can actually see that twist in the DNA, and you can see every single part of the DNA structure.
I'm curious
as
to know
it
what it means to say that water is twisting. That water, like skipping away from the DNA, just that water is twisting.
You can. When I was on I learned this I was a submariner. Whenever we ping, if you're in a submarine and you actually ping a large ping and then you try to ping it to the ground, what will happen is the water will actually twist. It'll actually make this twist pattern, and that you can actually visually see. So whenever the submarine does a large ping right down to the water, it literally causes the water to twist. It makes this sort of twist pattern.
So you're talking about like literal vibrations on a macro level, causing water to move.
The twist of the water rather than the distortion of the ping. How did you know it was? How did you know it wasn't in salt or something?
Like ripples.
It's just the way that it looks. So, for instance, if you're in a sub and you actually make that ping and you're near, life, if you're near like a dolphin, for instance, the dolphin will actually respond to that ping and try to communicate back because it thinks you're a giant fish. It'll actually try to respond back, and when it responds back, you can actually detect its response. By certain levels of ping, you can actually see its response, and it twists as well. It actually physically changes the structure of the water as it emits that frequency.
Changing the structure of the water though is different to sending a wave through. It's like the air, isn't it?
I'm just
if you
saying
send a
the way
vibration
that it
through the
looks.
air, that's just a density wave going through the air. It doesn't change the structure of the air as such. It's just
No. It
the air
doesn't
is
change the
molecules
structure
and
of the water. It just that's the way it looks. Whenever the pattern
it might be,
or the frequency is actually emitted, it actually.
You will get pressure waves go through the water, won't you? Anyway, yeah.
Anyway, it's a weird response.
To use sweet to describe epigenetics, it's quite a good thought.
Thanks.
Anyway, Azzy, I think I'm going to have to get off in a minute. Talking of sleep.
Me too. I'm just trying to put this
Well, I've got a couple
thing. Actually,
for you, it's
You're having
it's
elections in
1:30
Russia
for
at the
you, isn't
moment,
it?
aren't you? With
1:30.
Votnik and all that
Oh
stuff.
my god, I have
You
so
having
much stuff
elections
going
or
on.
what?
I actually found out that there's a philosophical club in my city. I'm like, oh my god, I finally found some adequate people to talk to, and they had a very decent, interesting group there. And yeah, so but they gather once a month. I'm like, what? That's ridiculous. I'm gonna forget about you guys. But I found some interesting connections. They one of the guys actually, he called me today. He said he has some curious project. I'm like, okay, impress me. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. But he offered me
It's
to participate.
always a pleasure to hear you talking, guys. See you later. I have to go.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Okay, nice to see
Bye,
you.
Cornelius. Nice to see you.
Have a good one.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
going to.
same here.
Are you having elections in Russia at the
great
moment?
talking to you guys. Have a great night.
Likewise,
Justin.
yeah, thanks for sharing ideas. I'm trying to put this new thing that Mendes created for me.
I'm going to be off in a minute. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'll see you next time, guys.
There we go. We're going now.
Has he had a quick question for
I've
you?
got to go as well. Then I say.
Thanks for
I must catch
coming.
up with you sometime.
Hugs. I have hands today, so we can do hugs if you wish.
Oh,
Yeah.
look, we've got hands.
Yes.
See, a virtual hug. Be a hug.
Free hugs.
Oh, I'll see you. I must catch up with you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to see
I'll
you
message
guys.
you sometime, actually. Yeah. I still need 2 names for characters.
Yes, I've been thinking about it constantly.
Right.
I would say Bulat and maybe
Something that's
Aslan, but
believable.
Aslan was more recent, so I'm not sure if it's...
Aslan.
One male, one female.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And believable as like early Kabardino-Balkarian. Yeah. Can I ask you one quick question? Right. The word for Kabardino-Balkaria, is that a bicultural or a bi?
Yep.
What's the description for that term, the name? I'm trying to say the Kabardino-Balkaria shaft. It's a bicultural, but the fact that it's got 2 cultures.
Yeah, well,
what
the
is
territory has 2 cultures, but we never know
regions?
who were the creators of that shaft, so you can't attribute it to any, certain culture or anything.
I'm really thinking about just the words Kabardino and Balkaria. What would you describe them? Are they culture names or are they regions?
I would say this, like,
what's the word?
Like it was like a layered salad. Like the land is the main, like the terrain is important. Then the first layer was actually ethnicities, like and tribes that lived there for like hundreds and thousands of years, maybe probably. And like and the nationalities were spread in a different way. And like some nationalities they had like similar languages.
So it's not a nationality there.
Like Kabardino-Balkaria,
because it's got the 2 in it. So it's a bi something. It's bi.
Yeah, but it was like a mix up, so that way like they don't consolidate into one large group. That's why they divided like and scattered it, and so that way they put like them with some other groups, so that way you don't have like big formations of people. So that's the problem. There was like a mix. So there like Kabardino-Balkaria was like a later invention where the Soviet Union decided to use it as a way to hinder these it's barbarians who are constantly trying to fight you. And but Kabardinians, like, which is
but I'm trying to describe. Yeah. So what I'm trying to describe is, I'm talking about the actual term Kabardino-Balkaria shaft, and I'm trying to say the Kabardino-Balkaria bit is a bi something, a bi-regional description or a bicultural description.
Bicultural, yeah, that's a good word to put it. Bi-national, bicultural.
I think I've got bicultural at the moment.
There are 2 nationalities.
Well, I had regional. I was talking about regional, as in, but I thought, well, no, it's bi something.
Yeah, bicultural sounds better. Bi-regional doesn't work very well, definitely. So either bicultural or bi-national, bilingual. Bi-national sounds more accurate, or bicultural, which is also good.
I just have to say
bicultural.
Bye-bye.
I'm looking up that. It's on YouTube. Stuff you sent me, by the way, about that book and. Couple of books after, very interesting.
Yeah. See ya. We'll share that idea later. You're so tall.
See you around. Yeah.
I think tall. I think Paul is sitting on the
stood up.
couch or something. So when he stands up, he's really tall.
Hello. Or about the same. Oh gosh, my room's appearing. Stand up. There we go. We'll have to do a standing up one day, won't we?
We shouldn't reveal our power to the mortals.
That's right. Yeah, look down on the gods. That's right.
Yeah.
Like the gods.
I think Fizzle had some
I will
question
catch up
for
about
me,
the
but
book sometime. I'm still.
he left.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still working on that chapter. It's becoming quite an interesting story.
Ooh, great.
Your character and the other two that are in it as well. So, but it's interesting because there's bits where you're in the dark and you're fighting your fear in the dark, and it ties back to what you were saying.
Yes, actually, I had that experience in reality.
You get to meet the
caves.
You get to meet the black-eyed beings. Actually, become friends with one another. As well.
Interesting.
So,
very
but anyway,
cool. Yeah.
I'll when I've finished it, and it will probably be a few weeks' time. There's a lot going into this chapter.
Yeah, I remember I had a very similar experience. Like whenever you go to the mountains here in Syria, they have like a lot of formations. Probably the stone and soil was a little bit different, and that's why they were able to create like a lot of structures that were like observation points. So you'd have like a valley and like mountains around you, and you could see the pierced holes in the mountain range, like in the rocks. They would create caves where they could hide. They could like protect the land and have a good observation point. And also they could go from one cave to another. They were like very small, like you would have to crawl and like sometimes there were like very dangerous spaces where you would have to use the ladder to go over it, and then you would take the ladder with you, so there's no chance to go if you've chased that person. Impossible.
So you could get back up. I often it's fascinating how people use cave systems and that as well. So that's a big part of the story, but I'm talking about the history of why that shaft was put there and stuff like that as well, and Zykova and that as well. But
looking forward to reading that.
I think you'll enjoy it, but I'll keep I'll try and finish it, which will be a few weeks time, and then I'll let you have a copy of the whole story. It's just one chapter in the book, and then I'd like you to get your feedback on it, and check that you're okay with everything.
Sure.
But if you can maybe send me those couple of names, I need one male, one
I've been
female.
thinking about it constantly. I want to try to choose some names that are going to be ancient, but at the same time,
something that's sort of believable. You know. Yeah, I mean, somebody will say, "Well, who knows? It's 4,500 years ago. The story."
That's exactly the key. That's why I try to choose the name that is going to be like sounds well for any generation. So it's something that is there the whole time, but you
preferably not too long names,
exactly,
like 7 or 8 characters or something. But that's fine.
I thought about Bulat, maybe.
Anyway, I could slot them in because I've got.
I thought about Bulat. It's like
because at the moment I've got. I've got a B, and a C, and I'm just going to do a text replace of the names when we get them. But,
good.
Yeah. Okay.
So
that's great. All right.
Yeah. It was a pleasure to see you. Actually, I have to tell you, like, I think for a couple of days recently, I was just remembering about you, like, and telling people about you. And I'm like, oh, I really miss talking to you, like, one-on-one and discussing some ideas and stuff. Like, I feel like we constantly are, like, in the same room, but we didn't have, like, a profound, like, nice conversation, like a long one. So, I would really enjoy.
Yeah.
So like for it's nice to have a one-on-one conversation when you can really enjoy things and ideas and share stuff. So it was
a good conversation. Yeah, I get on like Fizzle and Paul, of course. I think very much on there.
Yeah. I try to be in both words. I mean, I think I'm trying to be.
I know it's
getting the best of everything.
Very interesting. I'm still. Happy one day I'll send you a copy of the book if you want. I just sent one off to the States today. Nexus, I've sent her one because she's very much into all the ET stuff, so I sent her up.
Yes, exactly.
£20 to send it off to San Jose, but never mind.
And actually I was going to remember I told you about this Amazon stuff that I was trying to figure out. It's either 2 purchases or I'm going to ask my brother-in-law to purchase it, so that way we can leave the review, or maybe I can also create my own account and somehow purchase it, so that way we can have 2 reviews. So I'm still on that, but I was getting constantly slipping up out of my mind. But it's on my schedule.
Oh no, I know.
It's on my schedule.
I've had a busy week.
Once I'm done with that, it's like currently like it's recurring. But I'm like, okay, it's the better timing, maybe something. So we're on this.
Yeah, I still watch all your Instagram reels and that. That's great. Love the stuff you share.
So, thanks. I've been lazy lately, but
really
still
good fun.
But a lot of interesting stuff going on. Actually, I just revealed that there are other functions.
You're on a hammock or something.
Hammock. Yeah, it's my
We
my
lying
balcony.
on a hammock the other day, and I saw you. And was that your little dog next to you?
Yeah. She was coming out to see what's going on the balcony.
That's it. I thought was she there? I was like, the dog.
Yeah, she's there, and I actually put the new covering on the couch, and she loves it because it looks like a furry something, and she lives finding cozy space there. Yeah, so. And she keeps me a great company. Okay, I enjoy.
It's really nice talking.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, it's been great talking to you again.
Likewise.
Nancy, actually, yeah, we'll catch up sometime and have a chat at some point. Anyway, okay, I'm going to head off now, but I'll see you around anyway.
Yeah.
Cheers.